Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Episode 3 of the podcast. I gotta say that I'm having fun with this whole process and the momentum that we're building in creating this new movement. I really don't know what it is. It's quite staggering looking at the figures of how viral the channel has gone, how many people have joined in, how many people, or at least at what rate the subscribers are joining. I don't think it's unrealistic anymore to say that we want, at least I want, 1 million viewers, 1 million subscribers, not viewers, but subscribers to the channel, so we can create our own focused message. I want to talk about that for a second before we get into the topic of the episode. So there was this one question, and I think it's justified to ask that, is what is this podcast about? Why are we trying to create any form of subscription and getting something going? Well, number one, I think I promised you guys that creating an ongoing podcast would be the most important thing to do, because it's a platform whereby we can keep on having the dialogue and discussion and raising the incredibly important points that I've been raising over the years, but having a discussion, opening up a dialogue between the different viewpoints, because you really do have a schism between the different opinion points. You have people that are, or at least people are incredibly far apart. You can find them incredibly far apart on their viewpoints, and if we can build that bridge and then come up with solutions, that is where we want to be. I just posted a clip whereby Mr. Bill Gates has been doing an about turn and changing his messaging as well, and that is exactly what I'm talking about. If the messaging starts to change, whereby we look at it through the lens that we could come up with solutions, and that we realize that the planet is changing, that global warming is something that is, it is a natural process. I mean, that's why there's been science done on the core samples in the Arctic and the Antarctic and Greenland, etc. The core samples gives us a picture of the entire period of development of the planet, and therefore it's important to take that data into account. So we know that the planet's going to change. We know that things are going to happen that's outside of our control, but some elements are within our control, and it's about coming up with solutions that would save the lives of the species that live in the here and the now. This period, we don't have dinosaurs running around anymore. We don't have woolly mammoths running around. I mean, at least the scientists haven't brought them back yet, and I do think at some point it sounds like they are going to bring them back. But my point is that the species that live here and now, including human beings, they require a certain atmosphere. They require a certain amount of oxygen. They've developed within certain conditions of this period of the Earth, and with this changing that's happening, what do we have to expect, and how do we adapt, and we take it from there. When it comes to the human side of contribution towards climate change, those aspects is what I've really been dealing with over the years and coming up with solutions, and how do we turn that around so that they become, you can't turn negatives into positives really, but you can recognize the challenges and you can come up with solutions, especially in the microclimate environments and the immediate community environments, and that is where the real change, according to me, will happen. But we are going to do a proper episode diving really deep into that. I just wanted to say thank you for for really getting into it. There's been, I'm going to just talk about the straight numbers. We have over 72,000 views on the clips. The YouTube channel is running a little bit slower than what the Facebook is, but the engagement is incredible. 72,000 engagements is incredible. It's being shared all over the place. People are hungry to discuss and have the dialogue, and I am really happy to be part of that process. If I'm the catalyst to make that happen, then so be it. Let's do it. a lot of the I love the comments coming out where people say, "Let's go." Yeah, I'm there for it. All right. So the first thing is the podcast. We want that to go. We want that to be strong. We want that to go forward, and we want to go through all of those topics, as many as we can, and come up with as many solutions as we can. Number two, if the subscription base of this becomes strong enough, I do see that this will go past being a podcast if it is a regular, a strong subscription base that it has a demand for the content, because then we can look at putting a television show back into, when I say television show, I really do mean a social media platform show that would just be catering to the message that we yearn for. You've got to realize that coming from a legacy media perspective, I never really had that much faith in social media, which is why my social media platform stayed rather small. I just didn't invest time and effort into it. But the fact is that legacy media is dying down quite a bit. They're losing their power. And you have to understand that being part of a system like that, I mean, that's where I came from, that's where my training came from, within the media space. This is these are huge entities, enormous amount of producers and people that are part of the process, that make these episodes, that script these episodes, that want to sculpt the messaging. And if you don't have any overlords on your messaging, I can tell you one thing, my friend, that there's a lot more pure, unfiltered information that'll come forward. And that's the one thing that I've always been about, is about authenticity. If something isn't a lie, if something hasn't been staged, if something is real, then what you're going to be experiencing is what you truly want. I don't think people like filtered, scripted information. I don't, and I hate to say this, but the majority of shows, even if you think they're reality shows, they've been doctored to a large extent. And me being from the inside, I do know all of the inside messaging on that, so the inside info on that. So I can tell you that being as truthful as possible would be refreshing to have a non-overlord series being produced at some point. That would be the ultimate goal. If we get to 1 million subscribers, that's the way we're going. Definitely, that's where we're going. And that would enable me to say, for example, let's go back to where some of the best experiences in my entire life, where I worked with chimpanzees, for example, in Gabon, go back to some of those places and show you the real rainforest type of action, working with chimpanzees in the wild, all those different species of plants that the chimpanzees consume, learning so much from them moving in their wild environments. But being able to be a chimp in an environment like that is way better than being a chimp in an environment like Chimp Eden, where it's a semi-wild enclosure with none of the real species of trees and plants that you would find inside the rainforest that they live off. So I've had those experiences, and I've spent quite a bit of time in that environment, and I can tell you, it's cherry. It's TV gold as far as sharing that with the public. And I'm just, I'm so disappointed that never came to fruition, that we couldn't make that happen. Now, I'm never going to get back to chimpanzee rescues. Obviously, I can help others get back into it and do it. I don't think that's not my mandate anymore. I think the next generation will be picking up that. I'm going to focus on the next phase. Me personally, in my life, it would be more about the messaging, talking about the topic, sharing the knowledge that I've gained over time, the skills that I have over time. I can take all of us to places whereby that positive message will be uplifting. Maybe going to some of the bad places, but seeing it through a different lens. Maybe we can turn that around and show where the solutions can make changes, especially in those micro environments that I was talking about. Some of the, it really would be important to go to some of these places where deforestation, for example, and human encroachment is happening around some of these rainforest areas that you guys can see what I'm talking about when human encroachment is happening. I just showed you my backyard in episode 2, how that's coming around our reserve, but you can imagine that happening all over the place, and how important it is to put those solutions into place. All right. So for those haters out there, I do know they exist. The comment section is always out of control when it comes to that. I've seen a lot less in the recent weeks than I've had in the past. I've seen some real nutcases come out and attack me for being a climate denier, which can't be further from the truth. What I am is a realist. What I do is take the data and look at the perspectives of all the different scientists, not wackos, but real scientists putting their stuff forward, and then trying to figure out which is the best way, whether we can see tangible results being to the benefit of humans and animals of this time period. So I'm not a climate denier. I'm actually the one that says that I believe in the natural processes of this planet. I've seen enough of it to believe it. And then really important for me is not to blame the wrong things for things that can go wrong with the species that live in this time period. We should be blaming the right things. We should be focusing on the poaching. We should be focusing on where there is deforestation and it is affecting the climate. We should be looking at very specific complex issues and coming up with solutions tailor-made for those environments. That is true science. That is the true action that should make a change in the world. In anything else that has been shortened down to a slogan is bullcrap, over and done with. And nothing says it better than what Mr. Bill Gates has put out in his article in the New York Times, where the narrative is changing. And we'll see some more, this is my prediction, we'll see some more of those narratives change over time. All right, let's, so in a nutshell, podcast and being able to get a real show back up and running again, that would be to the benefit of the audience that used to love the Animal Planet series, and not having any overlords to try and manage that messaging. And number 3, I am going to be releasing and broadcasting let's call it a lost tape, which was my last rescue. This is an extremely traumatic period in my life, whereby I realized that I couldn't continue on with rescues. Not at that point anyway, because I would have lost it at some point with a corrupt official. I just had enough. It was during a period of war and escaping war and being able to get out by the skin of my teeth, and then having to deal with the forces of resistance that are just trying to stop you from being successful and trying to do a good thing. If a person can't recognize that a good thing is being done, then you automatically know that you're dealing with a force of resistance, a force of evilness that is just stopping you from doing. I've got so much I can share on that topic, which has been in my book. I did write and touch on a lot of those topics in my book, and I think me explaining it, it's going to be an emotional journey for me to go through all that again. But I think it's going to be fun to let it out. It's therapeutic. All right, episode 3, exotic species in captivity. Now, most of you that know my past, the reason why I was so passionate about getting to these environments where the chimpanzees were being kept in cages in places like in Angola, Sudan, being tied to, in Lebanon, for example, where chimpanzees were put on display at gas stations or restaurants or small zoos. I don't care if it's a developed country like South Africa and somebody takes a couple of chimpanzees and takes it to a shopping mall and wants people to come and play with them. It's the same deal to me. I put that a first world country situation with a third world country. We can't just blame it on people coming from third world countries and say they're the only ones that are guilty. No, this is on all of us as humanity, that we need to realize that exotic species that are dangerous animals should not be in captivity close to human beings. Part of the reasoning for me in Chimp Eden, why it made sense, was that I was taking dangerous animals away from those environments that was densely populated with human beings, and I was taking them to a sanctuary site that was like a maximum security prison. Voltage going through wires that would fry a human being. And it fried me a couple of times. I accidentally touched it, working too close with them. So I know what it feels like to get that kind of voltage pumped through you. And we'll talk about my traumatic experience in chimp escape here in a second. But I'm going back to where the exotic species are being kept in places in the world. And it's not, you know, people keeping small vervet monkeys or capuchins or things like that. It's still not a domesticated animal, but it's not truly dangerous, right? So in a way, that's an undomesticated animal that is, you know, you can still get away with it in some places of the world. It's not going to cause huge amount of trauma and conflict if something goes wrong in that situation, but I still don't condone it, because that animal should be in an environment that is conducive to their nature, and that is not your backyard or your living room with a, you know, monkey with a diaper on it. But let's focus on the dangerous animals, because there's lots of them. In the last couple of decades, I mean, you know, you can pull up AI. That's, you know, things have changed so rapidly now. You just don't have to just pull up articles, but if you can pull up stuff like you know, ChatGPT or Grok or any of these AIs, and they'll give you the incidence rates of how often these attacks happen. And there has been multiple lion and tiger attacks in the last couple of decades. There's more than 7 deaths in the US, for example, of these animals getting out of their cages and mauling their owners to death. More than 27 injuries from what I can read here in tiger attacks. The same with lion escaping. And it's not just in the US. In Thailand that happens, where a wild animal gets out and tramples on people. If you're going to be an Indian, you want to walk an elephant on a leash because you think that's part of your attraction, and the elephant goes nuts and starts trampling over people. Why are we surprised if this happens? Part of the attraction for me in building Chimp Eden was the fact that I was taking them away and putting them in an environment that was conducive to them. If the rehabilitation was going to be successful, it would have been a conducive environment for them. They would have been happy. We would have been happy to see them. But it was never a zoo environment. So if a chimpanzee doesn't want to be seen here at Chimp Eden, he can go to a part of the camp where nobody can see him and he's got his privacy. So therefore, that has a big mental effect on them. Have no doubt about that. What I'm getting back to on is that there are still too many animals in captivity, and those people not realizing the danger they're putting themselves and their friends in. Now, it's very easy, and I've been in these environments where I've spent time with people that do have an exotic animal with them. Let's just take a chimpanzee, for example, that was being raised up from 3 to 4 years old. You know, younger than that, I've even been in situations where people have raised a baby chimpanzee, freshly come out of the forest, been taken from its mother, raised next to a human baby, and obviously it grows faster, develops faster those first few years. When it gets to around 3-4 years old, that's when the baby chimp climbs on the roof and rips the satellite dish off the roof and throws it at you, not because of any other reason than it being fun. They are 4 to 5 times stronger than we are. Their bite force is incredible. I've seen, most of the experts that I've worked with, I can't actually think of one expert that I worked with that hasn't lost some body part working with chimpanzees. And most of those experts were working from outside of a cage. They were never going inside with chimpanzees. So even from outside, just keeping the animals in a cage, they lost body parts. I mean, famously, Philip Cornier, that worked with me as a sanctuary manager, slowly had his hand pulled into a cage, not here at Chimp Eden, but the zoo he worked at, and the chimpanzee took his time to bite one finger off at a time, and there was nothing he could do about it. And Philip was a big guy. He was a 300-pound guy. So there's just no way you compete with the power of the chimpanzee. I've seen Cozy. I wasn't there at the moment, but I was there to pick up the fingertip, where just snapped off a finger, just even with his front teeth, just snap off the tip of a finger for a split second like that. If you take your eye off a chimp and you don't realize what you're looking at, you don't realize the language, you don't realize the behavior. There's a lot that goes into working with animals. So I've got my digits. And that the only reason why I'm in a situation where I can say I don't have any scars or digits missing or body parts missing is because I had a very scientific approach to working with them, and my risk level was 10 times that of anyone else. I mean, if anyone else was doing what I was doing anywhere in the world, there would be very few of us to even come close to that kind of risk levels that I was taking. Because I was always inside the cage with the chimpanzees. I had to do those introductions and be the alpha male, and I had to bluff my way through it. And sometimes there were some fights between me and the chimpanzee, but mostly I could get through it by just bluffing my way through it. But incredibly dangerous environment that I had to take that danger, had to take that risk, not because of some adrenaline, me being an adrenaline junkie or something like that, but because the animals would be put down if we couldn't integrate them. So the risk was real, but the benefits was absolute. It had to be done in order to save those animals so they can become families and not put down. According to the law here in South Africa, it wouldn't have been the Institute's law to do that. All right. So that is just purely with chimpanzees being kept as pets all over the US and all over the world. I mean, I've been to Lebanon. We'll talk about our personalities at some other point, and where I got to the point where I said to myself, where I could look in the mirror and say, listen, well, now I'm violence prone. That part of me is now fully developed, where I'm ready to take action, violent action towards people, because they are actively resisting me trying to save these animals, and I can no longer sit on the sideline and just be another prop, another unsuccessful means of trying to get something done. And we'll get to that topic at some point in the podcast. But I've seen these animals being kept by a wide variety of people, smugglers and people that just, private collectors that want these animals, and they don't realize the risk that if and when something goes wrong. I'll give you an example. Right in the beginning here, we had a keeper. We call them keepers. Those are the guys that clean the cages, and they, you got to close the cage, and then you can clean the cage, and then you have to go through a series of opening and closing doors. And he used to have his earphones in all the time, and it was distracting. And we had to keep on talking and reminding him that you cannot distract yourself with music because you're going to slip up. And if a chimp gets out, it's not going to be a very fun experience for anyone if you make that mistake. And it actually did happen that he left the door open and a chimpanzee could get out, and it was chaos in that situation, because right in the beginning we had some incredibly unstable chimpanzees when Chimp Eden started. That was Amadeus, Nikki, and Abu. Abu was an absolute monster. If you could think of King Kong in his most ferocious moments in Hollywood history, some of the latest ones that were made about him, not this Transformers stuff that they're doing with Godzilla, but the previous ones. Abu had a sense of destruction. He had a sense of meanness about him that I think if you had to be one-on-one with Abu in an environment where you don't want to be, there would be nothing left of you. He had an enormous amount of power. He had an enormous amount of trauma, and he would frequently combine those two to put up a display that, which there's few environments that could contain that. Anyway, my point is that if you raise an animal in your environment, your home, your kids, your friends come regularly and see them, and you dressing this animal up, and you thinking that this animal has been raised by you, it can't be prone to violence. I want you to listen to this point very, very carefully. You cannot change the nature of that animal, no matter how well you treat them, no matter what mannerisms you teach them, human mannerisms you teach them. They can always relate back to their natural sense. They, what is called, it's the natural instilled behavior, programmed behavior, and then you get behavior that comes that they could learn from their mother and onwards. But that naturally programmed behavior, that is in essence what the animal is all about. That can come out in any time. They are still a wild animal and they can react. And it's almost like reverting back to old programming when that happens. And if you look at the attacks, some of the very severe attacks that's happened in the past of, I think that the ones that in the US are the most highlighted, but I can promise you, I've been to places in Africa where I dealt with officials and they were explaining to me how kids were eaten, where some of the chimps that I actually rescued in Angola, where some of them got out and killed bystanders, just walking outside on the street. I think 1 or 2 weeks before the rescue I did in Angola, where that successful rescue in Angola, there was 4 chimps to be rescued at one site. That was the site that Josephine was kept. No, it wasn't Josephine. I have to think about which chimps those were. But anyway, there was a 4th chimp, and he got out and he killed someone, and he got shot by the police. And that's my point. No captive environment that you're going to create is always going to be bulletproof. When Murphy's Law happens, that is, if more than one thing happens, something wrong happens at the same time, that is when you will have your catastrophe. One mistake you might get away with, but when multiple mistakes happen, they happen at the same time, and then that's when you'll have your catastrophe. So, in a nutshell, exotic animals should not be in captivity, and the best solution would always be for them to make their way to a sanctuary where there's maximum security, and where those animals could be amongst themselves and start learning and interacting in the natural programming that they have, and the little mannerisms, human mannerisms, will pop out now and then. Cozy is a great example of that, where I used to sometimes just talk to him, and he's learned language, not the chimp language, but he's learned mannerisms and he's learned language. I taught myself that by spending enough time with him, so I could have a conversation with him in communication that the other chimps just had no clue what Cozy was on about. And that could happen, that still will come out if a chimp is transferred to a sanctuary. But it is imperative that happens, because at those sanctuaries, the safety of other people are maximized. It's not just about your safety. And I really don't think that you want to. You might not be considering the full risk of what will happen if that wild animal gets out. Whether it's a tiger, I got a comment a little bit earlier about Tiger King's picture that I put up. Now, I find this human being despicable at the very best, because he was doing it for entertainment's sake, even though whatever his messaging he was putting out, I found that despicable. And the world ate it up like it was cake. I mean, he had a very popular show because of his eccentric personality. What a terrible... I'm not going to get into... I don't like attacking people unless I can do that to their faces and have a discussion with them about what their reasoning is behind why they do what. But my point is that if things go wrong in those environments and those tigers get out, you're talking about an animal that is built to maul, that is built to eat you, that is built to take you to pieces. And the same with the chimpanzee. There is absolutely nothing that you can do to defend yourself. I mean, yes, sure, I've had to do that. But would you have the physical attributes and the training to be able to dodge an animal that is out to kill you? There is nowhere you can hide. There is no door strong enough to keep you away from him trying to get to you. There is no tree that you could climb that you could get away from him. Pretty much the only thing saving grace that you would have is if you could get into a lake and swim, because chimps don't do that. Tigers, well, if you had tigers, I mean, the lake won't help because they can swim and they'll hunt you down in the water and eat you. So it's just not something that should be done, period. And people take on that personal risk and they don't realize how bad that attack will be. Now, a lot of people will know I would say part of my mental break away from chimp eating as well happened after the Andrew Oberle attack. I did cover it in the last episode of the updated book, where I had to deal with the situation when a master student was attacked because he got over one fence and he was close enough and took his eyes off, and the animal could get hold of him underneath the fence. That was incredibly motivated to get to it because they're so territorial. And I had to deal with Andrew at that point when he's attacked. The only thing that saved Andrew, let's just be clear, the two chimps mauled him to pieces. 2 pieces, removed so many body parts from him that it was shocking to come upon that. And I had to put my fingers within veins in his neck to try and stop bleeding. But the only reason why he survived was because he was dragged through so much sand and dust and rubbish that it clogs the wounds. That's part of what you're being taught when you go on survival courses and military training camps, is that if you have no stalling powder or med kit, then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be shoving dirt into those wounds in order to get the blood to stall quicker. And that was an unintended consequence of what the chimps did by dragging him around. But that is something that causes an enormous amount of trauma with whoever would come upon an accident scene like that. But just seeing a human being that looks like he's been blown up by a landmine, worse than a landmine, or artillery shell or something. I don't know what you want to describe the most horrible things that could possibly happen. So people that want to take on that risk, I don't think that you know, or that those people know, what that completely entails when that attack happens. There are plenty of cases where people have gone onto the media and have talked about their experiences and have explained how shown their wounds and everything else. And that should scare people, but it doesn't. I haven't seen enough people being scared away from that. And then you've got this explosion of wildcats being kept by people in all over the world. For some reason, tigers are a popular target, and lions are a popular target to be kept as trophy animals in cages and environments. I just can't deal with that. I think it's the most horrible thing. It goes so much against the grain and the programming of that animal that it makes no sense. But they have no idea most of the time they have no idea what will happen if that animal gets out. It'll be free for all and it'll be an absolute slaughter. So animals in captivity need to get to sanctuaries, and a lot of these animals do have the possibility of an easier introduction into wild environments, back into the wild. It is possible to do it with a lot of these animals. It's not so simple to do with chimpanzees. It's a lot more of a scientific process, which is something that I invested time to try and study and see how it would be possible to do that on a larger scale in the Gabon environment. That was going to be the next step after chimp eating. Anyway, guys, I think we've covered quite a bit. I don't want to make these segments too long, but I think we've covered some of it. There's plenty of stories that'll be posted, I think, in the comment section, and I already saw 1 or 2 of them, and I think they're really great. That people are talking about their experiences, that they had an animal that maybe sent it to a sanctuary. They might have had good experiences, but I don't think the people that had bad experiences would necessarily post about that. But I think there should be general consensus that wild, exotic animals, dangerous animals, do not belong in a cage in your backyard. They definitely don't. And for the love of God, please consider not just the risk to yourself, consider risk to your family and to your neighbors and to your friends and to anyone else. And leave the treatment of these animals to professionals that accept the risk, that get necessary training, or part of a protocol series to protocols that can save lives. And there are multiple defensive layers to try and contain situations like that. All right, guys, I've covered the base of this. If we need to come back to the same topic in a future episode, we can do that. I'm obviously counting on a lot of your feedback in the comment section, so we can go from that and see how, if we need to pick that up in the next episode. Like I said, I'm going to keep on running these episodes. We've got our podcast going. We've got the momentum. The people are really pushing through with this now, so I'm enjoying talking to you guys about it. Yes, so the next topic I will put up for discussion pretty soon once we launch this one, and then we'll take it from there. But I appreciate it once again to have you guys in the same environment on the show. And the one big thing the last comment that I want to say is that it's really going to be something to look forward to watching that last episode that's going to be broadcasted. It never saw the light of day. So the very last rescue that I did, that is coming pretty soon. And besides that, I'm also working on the fact that maybe we can get away with digitizing the entire series of all the episodes of the Animal Planet series onto the podcast channel, getting that on there for re-enjoyment by the future the generations that came after the show. So we'll see if we can do that as well. Keep up the momentum, keep sharing the posts, keep subscribing. The most important thing that you guys got to realize is that we are already a very strong community. Even Facebook says that and says this is a great building platform. But we need you guys to convert to actual subscribers, paying subscribers, so that you are part of a committed community that wants to stay part of this as if it is something that you want to eventually see the result of. That is going to be incredibly important to keep those conversions going. There's no benefit to me at this point. The point is to try and build the infrastructure so we can have that continued proper podcast, that show eventually coming up, and to get great initiatives going that would lead to you guys getting better information about the environment and everything else. Fun talking to you guys. I mean, this is going to keep going. But anyways, I'll talk to you guys soon, and another fun one behind us. See you on the next one.